There's so many programs for housing in this budget. Is there one here that really moves the needle?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's worth noting there's a bunch of them and that they're pretty varied. You've got the Housing Accelerator Fund, you've got these renter protection, there's a bunch of loan provisions. But the one that I'm focused on is this capital cost allowance program. And I get it. Leave it to me to kind of drill down on the one super wonky program here. But this is actually really cool. It's a revival of an old program from like the 1970s. And that one led to this huge surge of rental housing stock construction. It basically allows home builders to deduct a certain depreciation of expenses over a shorter period of time. What it really does is it allows them to recover more of their costs faster. And I guess when you look at it and then kind of the broader totality of these programs, they really do add to a sense that there is going to be movement specifically on the rental front. Mike Moffat is one of those guys that's been really ringing the bell on housing for a long time. And he sees good things when it comes to the rental market in Canada. Take a listen.
On the rental side, I'm actually cautiously optimistic we're going to start to see some relief very, very soon, particularly in our college and university towns where we've seen rents go up 10, 15% a year. I think that's going to start to go away. We're going to have less competition in those neighborhoods. So I'm actually cautiously optimistic on the rental side.
One note on that sort of capital cost allowance program, though, is that the original program was coupled with a plan that allowed builders to roll over some of their profits tax-free, so long as that money went into another rental property, and that added to the fueling of the rental boom. That's not included this time, so it really will be interesting to see just how much that portion kind of changes everything.
Much of this, of course, announced ahead of time by the government. Do we have a better sense today of how they plan to pay for all of this?
Yeah, one of the things that really stood out to me, at least, was how much of this money actually comes in the form of loans. That means the money comes back to the federal government. It doesn't add to the deficit. And it just, Ian, it kind of gives them more wiggle room in terms of how much all of this leads to, questions about the deficit, questions about the federal books. And it just does give them a little bit, frankly, more wiggle room.
Adding to the housing supply, in other words, building, is a long-term project, usually doesn't move very quickly. When can we realistically start to see these initiatives roll out?
Yeah, look, we'll see some of these start to roll out now, but you're right. A lot of this is going to take years to see actual results where people are moving into homes. But look, you got to start somewhere, right? There are some provisions in here that can be felt immediately. Leading up to this, we had the waiving of the GST on purpose-built rentals. That's already pushed some projects that were sidelined because of cost back into viability. A lot of these rental protections, they're going to be felt immediately. But none of this is going to mean that home prices are ever going back to where they were 5 years ago, let alone back when, like, my parents were gobbling up cheap housing in this country. So some Canadians are going to have to lower their expectations. Take a listen to this.
We have to be realistic here. Any notion of a very family or a household starting out and owning a single detached home near the core of either Toronto, Vancouver, I don't think that's a really realistic options for them. But I think for them to realize the Canadian dream of owning a home, it will require some adjustments, not going for that backyard single detached home near the core. It might be further away from the core, or it could be a different form of housing. It could be townhome or a condo.
So in the budget, Peter, a lot of money that will be spent. It'll help bring down shelter costs down the road. But does it fuel inflation now?
Yes and no. Spending is spending. As you say, it's going to ease shelter costs down the road. But for the moment, you're spending money on supplies. You're hiring labor to build. That is inflationary. But at the same time, as we talked about, a huge portion of this is just loans, which means it's not going to build up the deficit. So it does have some inflationary pressure, to be sure, but not as much as I think a lot of people had been worried about.
Nice to have your analysis, Peter. Thank you.
You bet.